guys, welcome back to Wix Fix. I hope you're having a fantastic day. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you about hover interactions inside of Editor X. Now this video was supposed to come out like a couple weeks ago. However, I was treating the hover interactions a lot like the hover boxes from the classic editor. And I didn't realize how robust the hover interactions actually are. I just thought that since the hover interactions feature was still in beta, that this feature wasn't quite ready yet. So in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to create like a team members area using hover interactions. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do is just make sure that this section that we have here is large enough. So I'm going to set it to 100 VH. Then I'm going to come over to add. I'm going to come down to layout tools, come over to repeater, and we're going to drag out one of these options. I think I'm going to choose this one right here. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and stretch it to the screen. But then in the inspector, I'm going to come over to padding and give it 5% padding. And then I'm going to press this little lock icon and it's going to apply that 5% to all sides. Okay, the next thing I want to do is go ahead and set the size to be a little bit bigger for each item in the repeater. So I'm going to select the item, come over to the inspector panel, and let's make it about 400 pixels high, something like that. I'm going to come over to the breadcrumbs and select the repeater. I'm going to select change layout, and I'm going to set the number of items per row to 3. And one really cool thing about the repeaters in Editor X is you can have the stuff aligned to the center. So let's say you have one more option or two more options instead of 3 to fill up a whole row. Now you can choose whether it's, to the left, to the right. You can even justify it. And then if we go ahead and add another item, you're going to notice that it looks like this now. In the classic editor, it would just look like this, and then you wouldn't have any way to change it, unfortunately. So that's one reason I really like Editor X's repeaters. Okay, the next thing I want to do is go ahead and add an image. So I'm going to come over to add. I'm just going to select quick add and just drag out this image. And you're going to notice since it's a repeater, it's going to add this image to each one of our items in the repeater. And I'm going to go ahead and stretch it. It's not like hover boxes in the classic editor where you would edit it how you want pre-hover, and then on hover you could add stuff to it. In Editor X, it's a little bit different. So what we actually need to do is create the pre-hover and the hover interactions before we actually apply the hover interaction feature to it. So what I want to actually do is have the image of, like, let's say the team member or the employee here. And then when the user hovers over it, there's going to be a box that comes up from the very bottom that says the name, their job title, and maybe a button to their page. So in order to do that, we actually need to add a box to the repeater. In the inspector panel, we're going to set the width to be 100% of this item. And we're going to set the height to maybe like 120 pixels. And we're going to use the align tool to align it to the center and put it at the very bottom. Then we're going to come over to the design tab, and we're just going to raise up the opacity of the background to 100%, and then we're going to remove the border. Now we can go ahead and apply a grid to this, because over here on the left, I want to add the name and job title of this employee. And over here on the right, I want to add a button. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come up to the add button, pull out this title. In the inspector panel, we're going to go ahead and set it to 90%. We are going to remove the docking from the right and the top, and we're actually going to dock it to the left with a 5% margin, just like that. And then what we're going to do is pull out another title. We're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to remove the docking from the top and just add 5% margins to the left. And since this one's going to be the job title, we're going to go ahead and edit the text and maybe make it 16 pixels, just like that. And then I want to bring these two together, select both and stack them. So now with the stack selected, I just want to center it in the box, just like that. And then of course, we just want to make sure it is docked to the left with 5% margins, just like that. And then of course, over here to the right, we want to add, and we're just going to pull out this button. And then we're going to remove the docking from the top. And just for consistency, on the right hand side, we're going to set it to 5% margins, just like that. The next thing we need to do is actually link the content from the database to this repeater. I've already created a team members database, and to be honest, I just used Wix's default team members database. So nothing in here is filled out or anything like that. But what I want to do is come over to job title, and I just want to set this person up with the job title as CEO. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and close it, and we'll go ahead and close this content manager tab as well. So now what we need to do is select the image, press this little link icon, and it's going to say, hey, we don't have a data set on the page yet, so we're going to create one. We're going to choose the team page, and we'll just select OK. Now that there is a data set on the page, we can now connect the image to the photo in the database. We're going to select this title right here, and this one's obviously going to be the name, so we'll select that little connect icon and select name. In the job title, we'll select the little connection icon and then go down to job title. And lastly, we need to connect this button to the dynamic page for the team name. That way, when the user clicks on this button, it'll take them to the page about that specific team member. So now if we go ahead and preview the site, this is what we're going to see. We're going to see the 6 team members that were in the database. And now it is time to add this hover interactions. We don't want this box to show up unless the user is hovering over that specific person. Okay, so the first thing we need to do to start this hover interactions is, let's just select the image. We're going to come over to the breadcrumbs and select item. Now we can come over to the inspector panel, go to interactions and add hover interactions. And if you look at this transition thing, you're going to see a bunch of different options. But for this one, we're just going to do a custom interaction. So now that the item has a hover interactions, we're actually going to select this container and we are going to translate it to be 130 pixels. So that basically moved it down 130 pixels. And then if we look at this little box that popped up, we can actually set the timing of the animation, and we can select whether it's ease in, ease out, linear, whatever you want. For this example, I'm just going to do ease in. Now if we preview the site, we're going to see I made a mistake. Now instead of having the box come up when we want it to, it's going down, which we don't want. Also with this bottom, with these bottom items, you can see that it's not disappearing. It's actually just moving down. The reason these are disappearing is because these items are on top. So we have some things we need to change. So first, let's go ahead and select the item again. And we're just going to start from scratch. We're going to delete the interaction completely. So now with the item selected, we're going to come over to add hover interactions, custom interactions. And the thing that I forgot to show you was we are currently on the hover state. What we need to do is switch over to the initial state, just like that. Now we can select the container and translate the Y position 130 pixels. So now when we preview the site, it's not going to be there. And when we hover, it's going to show up. This is exactly what we want. However, as you can see, we still have the content showing down here, which we don't want. So let's go back into the editor. We're going to select the item. We're going to come over to the inspector panel and go to layout, and the overflow content, we're going to select hide. And basically that means if any of the content is outside this item, it's not going to show. So as you can see now, it's gone, but when the user hovers over it, we're all set. Also for the data set, if you're creating a team page just like this, maybe you have a specific order that you want your team members to show up. For example, this person right here, their job title is CEO. Typically with website, you want the CEO to be in like the first space, and then the rest of the hierarchy follows, right? So what we want to do is come over to the data set. We'll press manage content. We're going to notice in this data set that there is something called order. And basically, maybe we want the CEO to be first, the CFO to be second or something like that. And then if we come back to the page, select the data set, go to settings, and we scroll down to sort, we can add a new sort. We can choose the field for order, and we can do low to high. And we'll add the sort. Now when we preview the page, the CEO is first. And as you can see, as we go across, the names are in order how we want them to be. The next thing I want to show you is tablet view. So as you can see, this looks pretty horrendous. So what we want to do is let's just select this image We'll select the repeater, we'll change the layout, and we'll select the number of columns to be 2. And for the most part, that looks pretty good. Now on mobile, it looks even crazier. So what we want to do is, again, follow the same steps. We'll go to the breadcrumbs, select repeater, change layout, and we're just gonna do this list option right here. And if you want, you can make this button smaller for this breakpoint, and we can select fluid. And then when we click the container and move the grid a little bit, you're gonna notice the button gets a little bit smaller. And we can just shorten up the button a little bit, just like that, and make sure it's docked to the right. And then we're gonna have to do the same thing for the stack. We're gonna make sure it's centered and docked to the left, just like that. So now when we preview the site, this is what it's gonna look like. And that basically wraps it up for the hover interactions inside of Editor X. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of different stuff that you can do with it. I just showed you the tip of the iceberg. So now that you know roughly how hover interactions works, it's time for you to use them on your websites. And before I wrap up the video, I just want to say we are on the road to our first 10,000 subscribers. So if you liked the video, or if you've seen other videos of mine and you like the content, I just ask that you please subscribe and help the channel grow. But yeah, that's basically it for the video. If you learned something, please press that like button and consider subscribing. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you all in the next one.